Misspelling was the final straw. David Hoch reveals how one era led the Somali fraud investigation. Guys, we already know that this is most likely going to be something oriented to the Leering Center, if that makes any sense here, guys. But let's go ahead and encounter this video immediately. This is a suggestion via a channel member.
My journey into uncovering fraud in Minnesota began when I started to notice very unusual changes in the Minneapolis area. I would drive around the Twin Cities, and it seemed these child care facilities were literally on every block. Minnesota sees a fair amount of snow in the winter, and I began to notice, driving by these child care facilities, there were never any footprints. So I said, well, what's going on here with all these child care facilities? So I began to check the Minnesota Secretary of State's website to find out just who owned all these child care facilities, and every single one of them was Somali-owned. The leering misspelling was the final straw for me. That's the spark that ignited my full-on investigation. Now we hear that the Minnesota Department of Human Service is forging documents and backdating paperwork. My name is David Hoch.
I mean, bro, if you can prove that, that'll be wild.
I'm a resident of the Twin Cities area. And although it's not in my testimony, I take exception to Mr. Weissman's questioning of my data as being inaccurate.
Okay.
I'll get back to that. My journey into uncovering fraud in Minnesota, and ultimately throughout the entire United States, as it turns out, began when I started to notice very unusual changes in the Minneapolis area. Remember, I grew up there, so I know Minneapolis very well. Most notably, the enormous number of child care facilities that had opened up. I would drive around the Twin Cities, and it seemed these child care facilities were literally on every block. Some blocks had 2 or 3 child care facilities on the same block. Minnesota sees a fair amount of snow in the winter, and I began to notice, driving by these child care facilities, there were never any footprints in the snow outside these child care facilities. And I'd go by them 3, 4, 5 times a day.
That sounds
Monday
weird.
through Friday, because my office is
that sounds
in the heart
weird.
of where a lot of these child care facilities are. So I said, well,
this is what sparked his interest?
What's going on here with all these child care facilities? So I began to check the Minnesota Secretary of State's website to find out just who owned all these child care facilities. And guess what? Every single one of them was Somali-owned. Not every child care facility in Minnesota was, but the ones that I was looking at that were by my office, and there were a lot of them. What's even stranger is that every one of these facilities is located in a commercial or industrial building, no play areas, bad neighborhoods, and several of the child care facilities had signage which stated they were open either 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 2 p.m. to 10 p.m.
And you never saw any movement?
Quality Leering Center, for example, or open 24 hours. Who the heck brings their kid to stay overnight at a child care facility in a rough neighborhood?
Okay. I definitely perceive, whenever I hear 24-hour daycare type of scenario here, obviously not referring to this instance here, because it seems like a lot of them are scams, right? But generally, I'm thinking about someone who works overnight. They need to go ahead and deliver their child somewhere. And yeah, do I suspect that these are most likely generally going to be like rundown type of areas, industrial type of parks, who would bring their kid there? Someone who's probably desperate, right? But let's continue.
Who the heck brings their kid to stay overnight at a child care facility?
But it definitely sounds like a shell company.
None of it made any sense.
Right.
The leering misspelling was the final straw for me. That's the spark that ignited my full-on investigation. So Minnesota has 2 different child care licenses available.
Okay.
One covers 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and the other one covers 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They're 2 very different licenses. So for a child care facility to be open 24 hours a day, or even from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., they need both licenses. How many of these facilities that are open these extended hours have 2 licenses? None of them. 0. They all have only 1 license. Minnesota child care supervision requirements include the following. For infant care, that's 0 to 17 months of age, you have to have 1 adult supervising for every 4 children, and max 8 in a group. For toddlers, which is 18 and 23 months of age, it requires 1 adult for every 5 children to supervise, max 10 children in that group. For 2-year-olds, you need 1 adult for every 7 children, so maximum 14 in a group. So if a child care facility was billing the state of Minnesota for 99 children, i.e. Quality Leering Center, that child care facility would need to have at least 8 employees supervising those children. These cannot be 1099 employees. They have to be W-2 employees. That means we're going to have at least 8 W-2s, and we're going to have at least 8 I-9s.
Right.
So if the feds went in and checked that, what do you think they're going to find? You already know the answer.
Oh, no.
One issue that is often brought up is that we are unfairly targeting the Somali community.
Okay.
This is a fair point to be made.
Right. It is.
As
It is.
one Somali
In fact,
gentleman exclaimed in our second video, we're not the only community that does fraud. Fraud certainly exists in every community. It was the sheer volume and the blatant nature of the Somali fraud that demanded my attention. When one facility, Mako Childcare, has another childcare, mini childcare, registered at the same address, but the sign still says Mako Childcare, it kind of stands out.
right.
And again, no children, no footprints in the snow, ever.
Yeah, guys, it definitely seems like there was like some like gigantic cabal that got together and basically said, hey, guys, listen, this is a scam. We can basically run up the check as high as we basically want, and all of these things here. That's what it sounds like here. Now, is it specifically indicative of one specific community doing these things? No, right? But it does seem like in this area, that's where the cabal landed. Right. And because of that, it kind of is what it is here. You're going to get looked at like you're doing, all types of terrible things. Obviously, now your job is to prove that these things are not, in fact, true. Right. But based off the evidence that David Hoch here is basically speaking on, it seems like this is going to be pretty hard to basically counteract the overall public opinion currently.
This is what I mean by being blatant. Misspelled signage, posted hours that require 2 licenses,
Yeah.
no child footprints in the snow, not even once. So how did we arrive at this point? Why are we having this hearing? We got here because of politicians, almost exclusively Democrats. A couple of names come to mind. Jody Harpstead, the former commissioner of the Department of Human Services,
Okay.
and Shireen Gandhi, the current commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Human Services.
She's getting kickbacks.
Harpstead put the whole fraud on steroids. She was steering the ship from 2019 to 2025 during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is when the whole fraud network exploded into what we see nationally today and to what we see in my numbers, which are accurate.
Okay.
So now we hear that the Minnesota Department of Human Service is forging documents and backdating paperwork, all in an effort to cover up their complicity in this fraud. This is just more criminal behavior from the gang at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. It's criminal behavior. Minneapolis was the incubator for this nationwide fraud, which we're now seeing in Maine. We're seeing it in Washington State. We're seeing it in Columbus, Ohio.
Yep.
It was constructed here in Minneapolis.
And guys, for the reference here, he just referenced Maine here. What's going on in Maine basically is going to be like home health care fraud and scams and things like that. That's what's going on. Same
And
community.
the idea behind it was if you can get a population in here and fit them into this fraud framework, you have a guaranteed voting block for all eternity.
Yeah.
The fraud was started and then it expanded out, and now you see it all around the country. So why is fraud bad? Why is it a bad
Why
thing?
is it
Why
bad?
does anybody care?
National
Fraud
debt?
is bad because it steals from the blind, it steals from kids with cancer, it steals from disabled, it steals from the homeless, it steals from wounded veterans, it steals from everybody in this room. So what is the answer? How do we fix this? The way we fix this is that the federal government has to go to the Minnesota Department of Human Services and every social service agency and say, look, if you issue a payment using federal money and it goes to a fraudulent company, you run the risk of us coming in, arresting you, handcuffing you, parading you out, bringing you in front of a judge, and putting you in prison. So if you're going to issue a payment, you better make sure that it's a legitimate company. Otherwise, don't issue the payment. Go on Google Earth. Look at, it's a liquor store. It's a grocery store. Why are you issuing payment to a child care or a transportation company that doesn't even exist? Why are you issuing that payment? It's criminal behavior. The federal government has to use that cudgel over these people and say, look, you better be sure if you issue that payment that it's a legitimate payment, or you could end up in prison.
There's like plausible deniability here, though, guys. I mean, listen, I like the idea of what he just said here, but I'm just not sure that could be something that's like a plausible thing here. Like, listen, they are doing well, technically, if they're utilizing federal funds, they should be able to pretty much go verify that that's a thing that, absolutely works and is real. And it's going to be like conducive specifically to the public, at least, right? The public is in fact going to benefit, not some random group in Somalia named Al-Shabaab. All right. Just a thought here. Right. But obviously that's going to be something that, we really can't do anything about unless we do something, I guess, similar, but I wouldn't say the jailing aspect of things, but I understand this here. If we look at specifically how the people are protesting, whether they're protesting in the region, the specific locale that we're talking about here, you immediately realize that, yeah, guys, imagine what some of the officials are like. If the people en masse are like this, if you remember how crazy things got during the George Floyd debacle specifically, right? You'll immediately realize, yeah, most likely that's just the overall local culture. Okay, the local culture dictates that if you are in our heads, right, considered or deemed as someone who is basically come into the country under some type of status. Let's say we need to basically do whatever is in our power to basically fund you, right? Get you on your feet. But the problem with that is when you do it blindly, you then end up with a lot of people who have never had not even 5% of this in their life, right? Utilizing a system, an entitlement specifically for Americans, in a way that they would probably utilize similar systems in their home country out of pure desperation, guys, right? So just be careful, guys. Just that's all I have to say here. Be careful with that system, right? Because there are a lot of people who have had nothing for their entire life. And when they come to the United States of America, they see this and they're just like, oh, this is easy. The whole time my whole life I've been struggling, worrying about basically, making $1,000 in a year. And now they're basically giving it to us for free. Oh yeah. I'm going to tell my friends to come here too. We're going to find a way to immediately funnel things out like a warlord, right? We're going to funnel money out, and send it back home and hide money in all these other places and things like this here, right? Because again, you're bringing people into the country specifically that have a completely different sometimes an overall outlook on life. They have no interest in actually assimilating to our local culture. They are still maintaining exactly who they were, but now they're in a place with absolute wealth in comparison. Right? Yeah, there are people that are going to take advantage. Is it every single Somalian in Minnesota? No, guys. All right. No. Like when I saw all these things start popping up all over the place, I was just like, dude, this is going to be bad. Right. Specifically with how we're kind of delivering it to the public, because again, I kind of point out the fact that I think many people just do not have the ability to critically think. And when you say specific things to people specifically, that really have no ability to critically think past the initial top layer of words, you can now kind of create a hostile environment for everyone, specifically those who have no ability to critically think. So now it's not just a small group of Somalians in Minnesota, it's now every single Somalian. So again, words do matter. But I think it had to be said. Obviously, I'm glad he kind of pointed this out here, though, that it is obviously not everyone, but is it going to affect the community with how it's worded? Yeah, because again, there's no critical thinking anymore, bro. All right. Everything's run off of emotion, chaos, and all types of like literal crazy, guys. But listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. If you guys are new here, please like and subscribe. In the meantime, I'll catch you guys later. And then if there is any more that comes from this scenario, we'll definitely be jumping into it, guys. Guys, do you want to watch movies with me? I never actually thought to like promote it over here, guys. But if you guys do want to watch it, guys, we have hundreds of movies. And I mean hundreds of movies that we've reacted to. You guys can come watch them with me if you want to, along with many TV shows. Currently we're working on the show Dexter, along with Vikings, and we have a lot of series that are already completed. But if you guys do want to watch it with me, the link is in the description. Everything's available at the second tier. But of course, if that's not your thing, guys, don't worry, right? Listen, like and subscribe.